am here with Tania Mohammad and Shahjehan Khan. This is the latest conversation of creativity and media as resistance as part of the Creative Imposter podcast. I thank you so much for joining us, and I am so excited to have this conversation because so far in this series, I have mostly been talking with people who I have known for a long time, people I've worked with, people who are here local to me in Chicago. And I think this is the first episode in the Creativity and Media as Resistance conversations that this is my first time meeting up with two guests in real time. And so I'm going to be getting to know them and getting to know more about them as you are as well. And this is so exciting to me. Also because we have a connection at a very prestigious event, which is the Tribeca Festival. Recently in 2025, Tania and Shahjehan were working on a project, or are working on a project that was featured as part of the 2025 Tribeca Creators Market. And as you know, if you've been listening for a long time, I had a project called Sounds Current that was part of the 2024 Audio Storytelling Festival. And I did not get to attend the Creators Market when I was there in New York in 2024. So I'm super curious to hear all about that. And Tania, Shahjehan, welcome to the Creative Imposter.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Andrea. I loved Sound Currents.
Thank you. And yeah, so Tania and I have been connected on LinkedIn for a while, and I've been following some of the things that she's been doing. And Tania, you mentioned the Tribeca Creators Market for a project, a podcast project that is in the works, that is yet to be fully birthed. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that project is and how it came to be part of the Creators Market and what the Creators Market even is?
Yeah. Well, would you say we haven't been birthed yet? I'd say we're like, what, maybe a toddler?
Yeah, we're like, yeah, I think that's accurate. We're like we're in daycare, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah, we're in daycare. So the podcast project is Karachi Nights. And it's a narrative podcast, audio doc. And it's all about the nightlife era of Karachi in the 60s and 70s before martial law came, because it was a swinging place. It was kind of like rivaling Beirut, which was known as the Paris of the East. And Karachi was giving it a run for its money. It was like almost the bite. And we're sort of looking at, the history, the musicians, what happened, and Pakistani music is having a huge moment now. So it was the right time to do something like this. And it's not our first time applying for Tribeca. Shahjehan, maybe you can pipe in and give the story.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the project before being birthed and now in daycare, as we said, has had probably in some way, shape, or form a 20-year gestation period, if you want to call it that. Basically, we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording. Tania and I met several years ago on this event called Pakistanis in Podcasting. There was only 5 of us there. There's not that many of us doing it. Well, I think there are more now. But anyway, she was one of the 3 guests, I think, and the 2 of us who had put the thing on. And it turned out that a project that I had been envisioning, I'm a musician and an actor and a guitar player, I'd heard of these bands from Pakistan, the nightlife era in the 60s and 70s, many years before that. And I had always envisioned doing some kind of something about them because they inspired me as a musician. And it just so happened that Tania messaged me a couple of days after the event and was like, hey, I have had this idea because my dad was in this band. And so it was really cool happenstance kind of meeting. And yes, since then, we've been trying to get this thing made, doing it very DIY, and,
extremely DIY.
Extremely, very, as DIY as our recording setups right now. And yeah, so like Tania said, it's cool to get into, we applied, I think last year, and got, I'm a creative. Most of my life is rejection. So actually when things work out, it's kind of amazing and unusual. So, I mean, I get rejected from thousands of things every month or two.
He takes it much better than I do. I like crawl into bed for 2 weeks and like binge watch Netflix.
Yeah, same, believe me.
Yeah, but then we got in this year and it was really cool to go.
Yeah, so
I've gone, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, good. We very quickly threw together, this was maybe about 2024. We threw together a very rough, all over the place sort of, thing. I was going to Pakistan. I did some interviews and we were like, oh, Tribeca's happening. Let's apply. So we didn't make it quite that round. So I think we were still like in the first trimester then. So we weren't quite, ready. And then since then, we've been putting a lot of work in it. So we really worked hard to get an episode together, a trailer, and we were like, okay, let's try again. So a couple of months later, we did get a rejection that we did not make the storytelling festival, but we got an invite to something called the Creators Market, which I had never heard of either. And it's generally an invite-only session. And they basically showcase works in progress. And because it's Tribeca, it's all mediums. It's documentary film, TV shows. And they were, Shahjehan, how many audio storytellers were selected? I think like 4 to 5.
I think just four or five. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And we got to showcase our works in progress. And basically, it was kind of like they set you up with industry leaders,
Speed dating. Yeah, it was like
kind of like speed dating. It was like speed dating. You submit your materials, anything else you're working on. I submitted my project about the African burial ground as well. And basically, they sort of ping you and then you get a list of meetings. And then it's like one full day of in-person meetings and then a day of virtual meetings. And then you get to do all the cool Tribeca audio stuff. Shahjehan had to leave, but I got to enjoy and get inspired by meeting some of the other creators and getting the sessions. So it was really
all the cool kid parties. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah,
the
definitely.
parties.
They give you the badge.
Tribeca
You get the badge.
Wow.
So Yeah.
Yeah, the parties are fun. The parties are definitely fun. I mean, I think what's really cool about Tribeca is there is so much emphasis and support for indie creators. And, they see a lot of value in that. So getting invited to that was a pretty big deal. Like it felt pretty good to get that platform to showcase this story because, it is a story which I think has a global appeal, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But sometimes you're like, I'm sure you know this, Andrea, working in the arts and working this year, like, why am I doing this? There comes a point. So that was really cool for us.
Why would you say that? Why would you say, why am I doing this working in the arts? I mean, I have some ideas, but I'm curious why you would say that.
I mean, I don't know if Shahjehan says that, but I think, it seems like you have to, if you really want to do what you want to do, you have to kind of like not let in all the noise. And it's really hard not to do that. So, and sometimes when you're in the throes of creativities, and I'm not talking about a South Asian project, any project, when you're really sort of figuring stuff out, there comes a point where you're like, why am I doing this? Because it seems so difficult and insurmountable. And then you kind of get over that hump,
Well, where are you in the project with Karachi Nights? And so what has happened, what still needs to happen, and what are some of those challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, I mean, so like Tania said, we have an episode done. We have, kind of a series arc. We have a plan. We have a budget. We just don't have money. So it's going very slowly. But we've done the research. We've done, we have a handful of interviews left to do, but like we're pretty far along in the process. So it's kind of like, I wish it was a little more like, if there was an easier or simpler way to be like, no, we just need a little more money to finish it. Me being who I am, so I am kind of related to the last thing we were just talking about. Like, I'm a full-time, artist, actor, musician. I don't know any other way to exist. I tried to do the normal corporate work. Like I just couldn't do it. I just got super depressed and stuff. So I have found ways to just scrape a life together, whether it's touring in bands or occasionally getting gigs on TV and film or narrating books or, so like, so yeah, like Tania and I both have kind of like scrapped this thing together, and we're going to basically make it one way or the other. We're just kind of, and I think in this day and age, it's kind of, and I'm very used to doing things that way. And I started a punk band 20 years ago, like very used to the DIY style of doing stuff. It is frustrating for sure, but ultimately it is kind of like, it's cool when you do it. And eventually, if it's meant to be, like it'll happen,
Yeah, I think, when you look at like a lot of narrative podcasts, there is a lot of work, especially when you're doing historical work. There's a lot of research involved. There's a lot of, making sure you're telling the story right, making sure the info you're getting is accurate. I spent a lot of time in Karachi, but I don't live there anymore. So, there's the communication. A lot of the people we're interviewing are older, don't use Zoom. So, it's definitely doable, but having extra support like a researcher or having someone we can pay on the ground to conduct our interviews, those sort of things would kind of speed up the process. It's definitely doable because at the end of the day, when you look at the origins of podcasting, sometimes it was just like a Star Trek fan in their mom's basement and a mic, so it's definitely doable. It's just podcasting has become such a big thing in the last few years. And, you're kind of like now wired to think like, I need $120,000 budget, but, that's not necessarily out there anymore.
Yeah, that was actually something that was really interesting to me in our experience at Tribeca is, we had, with our project, we had a generous donor as our executive producer who contributed the budget that was needed to create the first season of that podcast. And we submitted just the first episode. So when we submitted to the festival, timing wise, we already had the funding for the rest of the season. It was a 4-episode season. And then we ended up releasing a bunch of bonus content because there were so many fascinating interviews that we just couldn't fit into the 4-episode narrative arc. And so we ended up getting some additional funding to do some bonus episodes with those interviews. And we already knew that we were going to make the rest of the series. We just wanted the visibility. We wanted the networking, that sort of thing. And it was shocking to me to discover that as I was talking to some of the other, even in the independent category that we were in, that there were other projects that were talking about $100,000, $120,000 budgets. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh, like we did this for a fraction of that. And I mean, if you told me here's $100,000 to spend on, a season of a podcast, I could certainly find ways to spend it, right? Like, like you said, Shahjehan, like hiring people, bringing in Tania, like, fact checkers and having other people like composing an original score, things like that I would love to pay people to do. But it was shocking to me to hear what some of those budgets were. And I kind of also realized that some of those projects that were featured last year haven't been made yet. They haven't been published because though that's what they set the budget as, they haven't received the funding for it. And so I found that kind of interesting too, because I sort of thought, oh, well, if you're featured in Tribeca, certainly the series will get made. Like certainly there's not a risk of it not getting made, right? So I'm curious for you, having those meetings at Tribeca, like what benefit have you seen or did you gain knowledge? Did you make any interesting connections? Like what have been the results of that experience?
Well, we definitely made a lot of connections. The visibility was great. Like, it's opened doors for us in terms of meetings and meeting people. We got in front of, production companies that I think Shahjehan and I would have been spamming on info emails, for like days. So to be able to get that FaceTime, but there was also like a mentorship aspect. But I think, I have to call out the elephant in the room. The industry is not in a great state right now. Funding is very uncertain. I don't think we met one person who said, this project is worthless. And, almost everyone, I think we've met in the whole span of while we've talked about this project, everyone's been really encouraging. Do you agree, Shahjehan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were, I think, 2 of the 10 maybe meetings that we took. I think 3 were literally, this is exactly the kind of thing that we do. But in terms of actual, I mean, and it may be this summer, as we had been telling ourselves, but it may just be we haven't had any kind of real, hey, let's take it to the next state, So we're still waiting to hear, I think.
Yeah, and I think I got a sense of that from our meetings. A lot of people, especially, for example, the African burial ground, it seemed like a New York monument. It seemed like African history. It seemed more accessible to me than maybe what, a South Asian story. But people are like, well, we don't know where we're going to get our funding. We don't know what's happening with public media, and that's a very strong reality that we have to face. But I think in terms of South Asian stories, that's kind of always been the case. You've always had to sort of fight to get heard, at least over here. And so, having Tribeca in our corner is great and gives us some support. I think we're still going to have to figure out a way to make it happen by, glue and Scotch tape and grabbing some funding from here and getting a donor from there. And if not, we just move at our regular pace. Our baby's going to be in daycare for a while, Shahjehan, baby.
Yeah, I think, that touches on something which I think is important for maybe people your listeners. I'm assuming not all of them are creatives, maybe people that are, listening to see what it's like. There is no magic thing that it's you've achieved this and that guarantees the next, you know what I mean? That's one thing I've learned in 30 years of being a musician, actor, whatever, that even having gone to other festivals for music and film and stuff, just because you reach a milestone, you still have to keep going. There's no, magic thing that's just going to make it happen, and you have to really, you do have to love the work and and that means sometimes you do get a little, it's okay to take a break and come back to it, you know what I mean? Because that's just and luckily for me, I am someone who finds their creativity in lots of different areas. So if one thing's not happening, I can go spend 3 months on the road with my favorite band playing guitar, you know what I mean? So I'm very fortunate to have those other outlets. But yeah, it's not an easy thing, it's not it's just tough.
I wish I could say that I'm more all or nothing. Once I get an idea, I get very hyper focused, and I think I could learn a little bit more from Shahjehan. And
but you need both. I think that's why we're actually a really good team. To be honest, I am literally about to take off for 3 months, and poor Tania is all right, I got this thing, I'm going to keep chugging along with it.
I'm I guess I'll do research for 3 months.
But, it's one form of creativity that I've learned feeds everything else. Having toured before, I have met collaborators that I still work with now. You never know, who might come to a show or who you might, because again,
absolutely. The way I met Shahjehan, I had something else scheduled that night. It was I was doing some workshop, and it was the tail end, a recap one. And I was Pakistanis and podcasters. I'd love to meet more.
Oh, I didn't know we were your plan B.
Yeah.
I don't know if I knew this part. I love it.
Well, and I was just okay, so imagine if I decided not to go to that session, then I would not have gotten exposed to Shahjehan and the type of work he does. And I don't know if you've heard his last podcast. It was really a beautiful narrative podcast, King of the World. And I was okay, he's a music guy. I was sort of at a crossroads. I'd, Undiscarded had just wrapped. I'd, parted ways with the production company and was sort of at a crossroads. And I wanted to tell a story that was kind of closer to my heart and my identity. And I literally just DM'd him, you know? And it's like, who responds to random DMs, right? So it's
Me.
so it's like these
Spam text.
opportunities.
I respond to everything.
Yeah, these opportunities have, like, you never know. And somebody we met actually at Tribeca, they were very upfront. They were like, we're not sure about funding, but what are other ways we can support you? So those relationships, even if you're not going to get that dream budget, they might know somebody who knows somebody else, or maybe if they are into your work, they might be like, hey, I met this guy who's, really into documentaries. And so you just, it's a great opportunity. And we're keeping an open mind. But I have to say, I just got back from vacation. I think it was last Saturday. And I had stayed off LinkedIn that whole time. And then I decided to open it on Monday. And I was like, oh, man, I think I'm going to go back to Paris. Like, it is hard when you're faced with this, like, constant barrage of, like, bad news. And I don't think we're built to process, like, everything the way we get it on Instagram and on social media and on LinkedIn at this, like, constant level, and so it's hard not to let that affect you sometimes. I mean, does it get to you, Shahjehan, ever? Like,
yeah, I never use
ahead?
LinkedIn. I hate it.
You never use LinkedIn.
I'm never on it.
But even like
other
media,
apps,
like, does
for sure. Yeah, I have to.
Get to
it's
ever?
tough. Like I gotta. I'm thinking of on this trip actually just not even trying my best to not use it, but we'll see if that actually happens.
I think that's interesting because, LinkedIn used to be, to me, LinkedIn used to be the place where
I just never had a real job, so I didn't know what I was doing on there. So yeah,
it used to be up until recently. It was a place where it felt emotionally neutral to me, whereas other forms of social media might be talking so much about politics, and there might be so much like rage baiting going on and things like that to get attention. And what LinkedIn felt very straightforward, like, oh, these cool projects people are working on. And, LinkedIn is how Tania and I are connected mostly, because Tania, I was going to say you are such a skillful connector via social media from what I have observed. And that is
Tania
a skill that I do not possess.
Amazing connector. I must give her credit for, in terms of her.
I'm like, how do I make money off of that?
Voracious,
can't.
No, you're so good at the stuff that I'm terrible at, which is like follow-ups and just scheduling and like making plans and stuff. And I am a very like artist, emotional, like, oh yeah, that sounds good, let's do it. She's like, okay, yeah, but what does that actually mean? So I'm very thankful to work with somebody like Tania.
Yes. But lately, like Tania was mentioning, it's been full of bad news. And I don't know if it's like that for every audience member listening to The Creative Imposter or watching The Creative Imposter, but for the audio industry specifically, we're getting very badly hit from current policies and decisions that are being made. And not just political ones either, like also there are economic forces that are, huge companies are acquiring some of the production companies and then merging them into their ecosystem, cutting budgets for more of these narrative-driven or sort of cultural podcasts and stories, and focusing on what the quick hits might be with chat casts with celebrity podcasters. Because why? Other than the celebrity's salary, they're pretty cheap to produce, they're pretty fast to produce, and they say, oh, celebrity, lots of people will tune in, that's ad dollars. And, a 4-episode, 6-episode, 8-episode narrative series about music history in Pakistan, not such a moneymaker maybe for advertisers, like not a huge audience in that moment. And so you're seeing all of these talented creatives and producers and technicians who've been in the industry a long time being laid off and not knowing what direction to go. As you mentioned, public radio, public media getting funding cuts. And it's sort of like where the moment is not fertile for these creative, narrative, maybe even though you mentioned global appeal of the story, but maybe not like mass market commercial appeal for huge general populations that will bring in advertising dollars to a platform or to a network. So I'm kind of curious, from your perspective, given the ecosystem that we're in at this moment and the state of that ecosystem, why do you continue to work on this project? Why do you feel that now is the time to tell this story and get it out there in the world?
Well, I have to be honest. There have been moments where I have been like, oh my God, oh, what is the point? How am I going to do this? Like, even if I get this made on my own, like, who's going to release it? And I think you just have to sort of connect with why you wanted to do it in the first place. And I think there's like definitely a South Asian aspect to this. Like, we've always had to fight for the funding dollars. We've always had to fight for the perspective. I mean, just recently, we've been having great representation in, television shows and films. And before you'd have like one golden shining example, you remember Bend It Like Beckham or something like that. And now you have several. I mean, Shahjehan himself was just on Delhi Boys. Do you want to talk about that, Shahjehan? Like, I don't think that show would have been made a while back. So those sort of things give me hope, definitely. And I guess being scrappy, you just have to remember, like, okay, fine, maybe we're not going to get the big Hollywood deal. And so that's always been the reality. Just go back to your roots and kind of, go back to, but it is hard. It is hard sometimes. It does feel like an uphill battle, especially when you see like amazing, talented people, switching to that open to work, so it's hard.
What you said, reconnecting with why you want to tell this story and why you want to do this project. Why is it so meaningful to you?
I mean, for me, I think, I've come at a time where I definitely want to feel that connection to home more. I've been in the States maybe for almost 3 decades, but Karachi's my home. And my dad was in one of those bands, so, and for me, I've always really, on a personal level, I think I do history stuff and archival stuff because if someone doesn't record this, it's going to be lost and it's going to be gone. And those stories, especially as our elders age out, I never got to speak to my dad about it. My dad passed away, and I was like, well, I never sat down and actually talked to him about the good old days. I was always managing his medication or like his health stuff and, worried in the business of care and all of that, as opposed to just like getting to learn from him. And, we're losing a lot of those people. And like I said, I do think there's like a global element to the story. And Shahjehan, his connection is different. He comes from a musician's point of view. He's grown up here. So I'll let you speak to it for Shahjehan.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just like doing cool, interesting things that are weird. I do get asked stuff like this a lot. Like, you just do it because like you don't know what else to do, I still recall, the feeling probably for me, trying to capture in audio form the feeling that I had when I first heard this music in 2000, whatever it was, 8 or 9, when me and my bandmates at the time came upon this compilation called Pakistan Folk and Pop Instrumentals that someone had put together. And we just couldn't believe that this came from the place that we were from, and it was just cool and weird. And yeah, just other people should know about it. And it's cool to be able to like be somebody that can tell a story like that, and I'm still consider myself newer to podcasting. I think maybe 3-4 years ago is when I made my previous
Me too. I'm
series.
fairly new too. I'm not a long-time podcaster.
So, and I mean, I also at the time, I've also sort of seen the other side, like you guys were talking about, of like, being people that want to just like make things for money. And that's why I left my old company. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I'm just gonna, yeah, you just have to like, you have to do what you want to do regardless. And just the same punk aspect of like, we're just making this, we're going to put it up on a MySpace page and maybe somebody will hear it. I don't know. You know, just a couple of days ago, actually, I played my first punk like house party with I played another band now in Providence called Rubby Shovey. And I haven't played at a house party in like maybe 15 years or something. And it was like these RISD kids that had thrown in Providence, like Brown and stuff. And yeah, it was like the punkest thing ever. And it was so fun. It was like in a basement with low ceilings. You know, there's like a different state. There's like 3 stages, one of which is like a school bus outside. There's like an art installation. And then there's like all these like punky kids just like sweating with you in the basement. And just like nobody cares about anything, you know, in terms of like, nobody got paid. I don't know if we got paid or not. Like we just made it because it was fun and it was like, it was cool. And I feel that's the stuff that these are the memories that I'm making. And so anyway, I just went on like a long tangent there, but yeah, like I still very much have that, like, punk spirit in me, you know, so I'm going to be part of things that, and want to do stuff that kind of like in that way. I don't know if any of that made sense.
Actually, yeah. I mean, that's it makes a lot of sense. And I love that tangent because I was just recently, just got back from Santa Fe for a work trip, Santa Fe, New Mexico. And one of the things that we were able to do while we were there that was not work was this theater company that is based there. I had just heard about from someone here in Chicago. And they said, you should check it out and see if they're doing anything while you're there. It's called Exodus Theater Company. And they do immersive theater productions with tiny audiences. So the current production that they were doing is an adaptation or a story sort of inspired by the story of Cyrano de Bergerac. And they frame it as you as the audience member are coming in to your high school reunion. And you are taken throughout this whole space that they're in, that they're performing in. And there's these little scenes and there's 2 timelines happening at once. One is the high school reunion and one is flashbacks to your senior year of high school in which something significant happened. And you like, you know, they hand you a drink when you walk in, they give you a name tag, you have a like most likely to cure cancer, most likely to join the CIA, most likely to whatever. And it's like a 2.5-hour experience where you are completely immersed in this experience, in this space. You're not an audience member sitting on the outside watching something. You are an active participant. And it was like a space to totally forget about all of the troubles that are in the world, right? It was a space to be completely immersed in the experience of what is happening and to be very much present moment and in your body, in your emotions as you're going through the story that they're presenting, that you have now become a part of. You now have a vested interest in. And I just was so grateful for that experience because, you know, as Tania was saying, like all the bad news and looking at social media and everything that's happening in the world, not just in our industry, just all of the stuff, sometimes it's hard to experience the joy of creativity and the joy of being a part of something that puts you in touch with your emotions and your humanness and just that sensory aspect and doing something that you love, really. And so I think that's really cool how you described that experience and bringing it back to the project is like, sometimes we just create because it feels meaningful to us. It feels, you know, and you're like, I don't know, I think people will like this, but
yeah,
there's a point at which things become like you become focused on, you know, oh, what is the distribution strategy? Who is the audience? How do we get the funding? And it gets into that. Like, I know for me as a creative, when I start to get into that mode, it kind of sucks the joy. It sucks the joy out of the creativity.
Yeah.
How do you each as artists, like, how do you reconnect? Like when you start to get feel discouraged or it feels hard or you have to do the businessy type stuff, how do you reconnect with that joy of creativity?
I think Shahjehan has a manager, so that maybe that's what I need.
Oh, were you gonna?
You go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, I play in like 3 bands. I get to, do some fun film and TV stuff here and there. So it's just such a part of me, So I tune out and just like lay on the floor and listen to music or something. So like I'm pretty adept at fun. Because I've had to do this like, again, because I've tried the other way, and it just didn't really work for me. So I don't know. I have what to
he has
some
a lot of
people might
buckets
seem
to
like,
draw from, I think.
yeah, but also
when one is frustrating him. Yeah.
Sure. And I maybe have like a weird ass life that some people would think is strange, but that's how I do it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, Andrea, I'm still finding a way. I'm still fine, because I said the difference between me and Shahjehan is he's a lot thicker skin than I do. So for me, it's hard to sort of, dip in and find that joy. And taking a break is definitely a good way, and setting realistic goals. I was like, okay, I think I haven't had a chance to speak to you about Shahjehan about this, but I was just like, breaking news. I was like, I think instead of like figuring out outreach and marketing and all of this stuff, I just want to like work on the next episodes. Like maybe that's what I do, and that's kind of when we have the most fun, right?
For sure. Yeah. No, I'm thinking of exactly like when we're just like on a call and we're like going through stuff and that's the fun part, like the
that's
writing.
The fun part. And instead of, like, sure, would it be great if iHeart cost us a ton of money, but right now it's the situation is what it is, and maybe in another 5 to 6 months things will settle. I mean, yes, the industry obviously has to evolve. It's not going to be what it was or what people thought it was going to be. Or
maybe I'll meet some magic donor on the road. You never know with me.
You never know. So I think it is hard because I'm somebody who has like a lot of empathy. And of course, I have the luxury right now. I'm fortunate I have some projects that pay, but I can also devote time to a passion project, which a lot of people don't. It's really hard to see talented people, my friends in other industries. A lot of people my age, Gen X, they're just like not knowing where to land. And I'm just hoping maybe in 3 to 4 months, we'll kind of know what to look forward to or at least what to work with in the next 4 years. Right now, there's like, oh, this is being cut. NEH is being cut. Like there's so much, there's like a barrage of like a battery of information. And hopefully in the next few months, maybe at least things will settle so we know what we're looking at for the next 3 to 4 years. And, you come up with a new plan. I mean, that's one of my big draws to this story is the resiliency. A lot of these guys didn't have state-of-the-art equipment. They were making their guitars. They were all pooling in their money, and someone went abroad and they got like an amp. One of the musicians was telling me how their amp started picking up the radio because they made it with the radio parts, But despite this, and that's the story of Pakistan as well. It's like a resilient country despite like everything it's been to. And I think South Asian creators always have had to be somewhat resilient, So getting back to basics, like sure, the dream of whatever was going to happen afterwards and getting like a big package was great, but we got to get back to basics and if you get back to basics and realize you don't want to do it, then do what Shahjehan does. Find something else, find something else that fills your creative bucket and fills you forward,
What have been some of the like great discoveries or really cool moments, like you were talking about the amp, that the interview about the amp that was picking up radio signals and things like that? What have been some of the like great discoveries or moments or emotional things or cool things that have happened as you've been doing these interviews and working on this story?
I mean, for me, and Shahjehan will have his own point of view, for me, it's really learning about the diversity that existed in Pakistan. I went to school there in the 90s. Things were very politically unstable at that time. So learning about this other time when things were really cosmopolitan, we had a ton of Chinese population. We had Jewish people in Pakistan. Obviously that population has shrunk now. So learning about that history and being able to look at it through my new home, especially in the States. And so I think that's added a relevancy to the project, the rise of authoritarianism, discrimination against minority communities. And I'm like, okay, this is a story from the 60s and 70s, but maybe we can learn from it. Maybe there's stuff we can apply now at what's happening. I mean, we were going to apply for an NEH grant for this project, and that's a big, heavy lift for two creators like that. It's a 40-page application. We couldn't get it together. And in one way, I'm so glad we didn't do it, because if we had gotten it, it probably would have been gone. Several organizations, South Asian, Black History ones, they've all lost their funding. So I think, you kind of have to look at stories of resiliency and scrappiness and pivoting to figure out how to keep going, And there's an act in telling those stories that is an act of resistance, because, the odds were stacked up against you. So
I was going to say, for me, actually the friendship I formed with one of the drummers of the band, the drummer for the first of these bands that I heard was called the Panthers. And we met almost 20 years ago now. He actually was in Boston. He came to see my previous band play. And just over the years, he's kind of an amazing guy. He's I hope I'm as cool as him, when I hope I'm a cool uncle like him. He's still, he's an engineer, but he's he just made a double album. He wrote a book about his life, and hopefully I'm going to get to see him again when we're on tour out on the West Coast this year. So, and just, he's been with, even obviously years before I met Tania, we just stay in touch, and he's always I'm glad that you're still, even if nothing has come of it, it's means that it's meaningful to me that someone gives a shit, basically, to keep talking about this stuff. So I think it's a success, already. So
that's also something that's really important to me as a podcast creator is, again, sometimes there's so much focus on the end product and the audience and the distribution of it, but sometimes the act of having the conversations and recording the conversations, the act of the connection that you're having with the people that you're talking with, you've already created so much value in that exchange and in that documentation, that I think it's important to sometimes really be present in the process and not as worried about the final outcome. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important. And speaking of the act of resistance and what you're creating, this series is about creativity and media as resistance. And we've talked a little bit about the state of the podcasting industry, the audio storytelling industry. We've talked about some of briefly touched on this shift towards authoritarianism in the United States government at this moment. And I was when I was reading about the public media funding being cut, I called my partner and I was like, I just feel like they're taking away everything I love right now. I just felt like a big baby. I was just like, wow, why are they destroying everything that is great in this country? And I'm just curious for you all, in regards to this project, or not in regards to this project, just in terms of as humans and as creators, and as artists, what do you feel like you're part of the resistance? What do you feel that you're resisting against? And then also on the flip side of that, what is the world that you hope to create through your choices, your daily activities, through the art that you're making? Tell me more. How are you feeling in this social political moment?
Do you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean,
I saved the big heavy question towards the end, right?
Yeah, no, sure. I mean,
I have my
don't know.
thoughts,
And
but
I'm speaking just for myself. This obviously applies to lots of people. My whole life has been an act of resistance, whether it's creative or not. Like I started a post 9/11 Muslim punk band 20 years ago, and the media was crazy about us, but then it turned out they only thought it was cool when we were like resisting what they thought was the oppressive stuff, not when we were like critical of stuff, like so. And then in terms of, the work that I've chosen to do, whether, in the acting world too, I think it's cool now that people like me and have are becoming more of the creators themselves instead of sort of being like the, just sort of, I don't know, let me try that one again. So yeah, I think that like, it's actually a pretty crazy time to be driving around the country in a van for the next 6 or 7 weeks, going to almost 40 cities. I remember the last time I did this was 2015. My previous band, the Caminas, did a tour called Rock Therapy, and it was early 2016. Sorry, when number 45/number 47 was first announcing his first term and stuff. And it truly, I mean, you can get bogged down in the news and I'm saying I do every single day. But it's kind of like, we're all like there are versions of the three of us everywhere, and we just have to like be with each other. Like that's it. Like that's the biggest act of resistance. And, and like artists will always make stuff, so it's not like, yeah, it's super disheartening, in lots of ways, but also like, yeah, like it's gonna, people are just gonna keep making stuff, and yeah, I hope that's not too like simplistic of a.
No, it's brilliant. It's actually Shahjehan, it's actually the entire reason I created this series, because at the beginning of the year, I was like, I am not motivated to do anything, like nothing. Yeah. Like I don't want to work. I don't want to do my clients' projects. I don't want to record. I don't want to.
It's like every 3 to 4 days. I feel like, so as someone that has struggled with depression and anxiety and, addiction and things. And I think before this year, it was more of like, I just have one of those days every couple months or something. Now it kind of feels like every week. Yeah. There's like one day where, like Tania was saying, you're just like, what is the point of any of this?
What is the point?
Me and my wife are not going to have kids. So I'm like, what, all the stuff I did 20 years ago with my band, like it's worse now, so you can go down that rabbit hole, but you gotta just keep going, man. I don't know.
Yeah. That's why I find working with Shahjehan very inspiring, because he's definitely walked me off a ledge a couple of times, because I'm a chronic overthinker, which is like a nightmare for a narrative podcast.
I relate.
But you just, I mean, that's the one thing I think I've taken off from this project, and being a Pakistani myself, I have lived through various crazy governments, elected, non-elected, and you get through. And you forget that living in the States. I've been living in the States for 30 years. So right now it feels like the sky is falling, but other people in other parts of the world are still managing to get through, putting out amazing art. In fact, it's like a fantastic time for our culture in terms of creativity, what's happening.
Yeah, Pakistanis are now the ones that are like, hey, what's going on? You guys, welcome to our life.
I mean, I was scared. I shouldn't say this on public platforms, but I deleted my WhatsApp and Instagram because I was like worried about like the border crossing. I mean, I have the last name of Mohammad, so it's.
And I got the middle name. So I just got approved for global entry. So I'm just saying, I didn't think that was going to happen.
I know. I was
My-
like, oh no,
my
not
life
the
and
airport
history-
issues again.
My life and
That's
history
just-
at the border, like the amount of times I've been detained and been on lists and things, and they just
Me
gave me
too.
global entry. So
Yeah, I've walked up to, this is just a couple of years ago, with when my daughter was like, maybe 2 or 3. I walked up with my white American husband and half white daughter, and I still got separated and put in a different room.
yeah.
So it's like, I'm like, oh, here we go again. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah. But that's what you need in the arts, right? And creativity is the resiliency, the flexibility, and the ability. I've never been like a fighter with a capital F.
Mhm.
Maybe part of me has been scared, having lived in places like Pakistan. You're like, all right, I don't say too much because but like I think you can resist through your work, where you choose to put your energy, what organizations you support, where you use your voice. Those are ways to do it. It's just, I think the overwhelming thing is right now there's so many places where you can do that. And you're like, what should I support? And then I guess you have a day like Shahjehan where you like lie on the floor and listen to music on your headphones.
I think we have to take those days when we need them.
Mhm.
I'm going to pop this website up here. This is Shahjehan's website, shahjehankhan.com and / Karachi Nights. That is a nightmare for audio to say. But of course, if you are listening to the audio version of this after we've live streamed, it will be linked in the show notes in the episode description in your app, of course, for your convenience. And you can learn more about the project and follow it there. And also, TaniaMohammad.com is where you can learn more about Tania's work. She has worked on, even though I didn't realize that you were new to podcasting, Tania. I thought that you'd been doing this forever, is kind of the impression.
No, just I'm one of the, I definitely have a novelty seeking brain, and I got into podcasting. It was right time, right moment, right after the pandemic, or towards the tail end of the pandemic,
So you can see some of the other projects that Tania has worked on here. And also linked in the show notes, of course, in the audio version. And anything else that folks can do if they're curious to follow the project, to the development of Karachi Nights, or if somebody is listening to this and they're magically that magic connection that's like, oh,
Call us.
I know about this incredible grant that they should apply for. Or, oh, I know of this person who would love to fund this. What would be the best way to get in touch?
Well, I believe our contact information is on the website.
Great.
So that's the best way to reach us. And also social media. Like I said, I met Shahjehan, which is Act #2 New York for me. And then Shahjehan has all his tour information on his social as well. So.
Yeah. So mine, you can find me at Shahjestan. That's SHAHJISTAN.
Awesome.
And as we discussed earlier, I will probably respond to a DM. So
Yeah.
So don't be
When are
afraid
you coming
to
to
reach
New
out.
York, by the way?
October 9th or 10th. So
Okay.
I'm going to be touring this year with a band called Pile, Pile. So all the tour dates are at pilemusic.com. We're doing 64 shows total in the US, the UK, and 13 European countries. Yep.
What inspired this to be the moment to go on tour?
They asked. They're my favorite band. And I was in their music video earlier this year for a song called Born at Night. And they're old friends, and they just needed a fill-in. And I have been literally dreaming of this day for many, many, many years with this specific band. So here we are.
What's your instrument or instruments?
I play guitar.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. And as we're working towards a closing here, curious if you have any thoughts for creatives in the audience who are feeling that, like, what is the point right now? When if somebody is in that moment where they're like, why am I even working so hard to get this thing made or to create this thing? Or I'm just feeling so overwhelmed that it's hard to get back to that joy of creating. Do you have any thoughts or tips or advice that you could share?
Yeah, I think the algorithms and the programming of social media is such that the bad is what is amplified. And it negates the fact that we're all doing amazing stuff. And that's why you have to go meet people and just see that people exist and they do things anyway. So it's just kind of like training yourself every day to just act in the opposite way that you're feeling. I think and that is just as much me giving myself the advice as it is to other people.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, just know that you're not alone. Like, I think our modern working system of working remotely and the convenience of being able to work from home kind of isolates us. And I'm part of a couple of groups where we have like Monday check-ins, like on air. And those sort of things help you keep connected, or just go out and do something to switch it up. Like, take a walk, see a show. There's so many free shows right now because of the summer. Go see an outdoor movie. Reach out to someone whose work you admire. I mean, I know LinkedIn can sometimes be kind of, whatever, people bragging about all their projects, but I've actually met some wonderful people through that, and people who I've collaborated with, people who I've gotten inspired with, just have a conversation, meet somebody for coffee, Get off your phone. I need to take this advice, definitely. Get off your phone, for sure.
And I want to remind all of our audience that we are streaming these conversations on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Central on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram when it plays nicely with us, which is not always, but most of the time. And also replays are available on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the audio versions, lightly edited audio versions with a new intro from me after I've had some time to kind of sit with the conversation and the things that were discussed. Then I might have some new thoughts that I'll share in an intro. Those are coming out in the Creative Imposter audio feed on your favorite podcast app. And I also want to acknowledge this is streaming live on August 28th, which, Tania, I believe you said is a special day.
Yeah, it's my dad's birthday.
Your dad's birthday. What's your dad's name?
Arif Mohammad. Yeah, and he passed in 2016. And so, this show is like an homage to him as well. And all the old...
And it's also my nephew's birthday.
Oh!
Ellie. Yeah, he'll be turning 10.
All the generations.
Yeah.
All the generations are celebrated on this day. And before we end here, is there anything else that's coming to your mind, Shahjehan or Tania, that feels important for you to say in this moment?
I think we've covered a lot of ground. So I just want to say thanks so much for having us. And it was a real pleasure to talk to you. I haven't done one of these in a while.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I think, like I said, having conversations like this is what gets you out of your funk and your zone. So if you're not doing it on a live, take the time to talk to somebody, who means something to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody.
And keep going. Keep going.
Oh, and keep going.
Yes, keep
yes.
going.
Keep going.